Hi, Sabrina. Welcome to the OK Room. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Hi, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. So this series is titled Builders of Africa, and it's basically to highlight the builders of Africa, as the name suggests, right? To showcase the hard work that people in Africa are actually doing to push the continent forward, right? And we're glad to have someone like you here today.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for inviting me.
today
I'm
we're
very
gonna
excited.
be no, please go on.
Yeah. No, I was saying I'm very excited about the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Likewise, I'm actually very excited about what you do, and I hope when people see this too, they can also learn from what you're doing and be able to start something up there as well, maybe push what they're doing forward.
Mhm.
So Sabrina here has a plant lifestyle brand, and it's actually something very interesting, and I don't want to talk too much into it without giving her the space to own her craft and say, this is what I do. This is the amazing stuff I do, right? But it covers the likes of skincare, snacks, and stays in Tanzania, right? It's very amazing stuff. And today we get to hear about it. So Sabrina, if you please just say a bit of word to the room to introduce yourself and get things started.
Okay, first I will start with a disclaimer that it's a very small business. It's something that I'm bootstrapping with my savings and my client work, and we're building it with my family. So it's super exciting for me, actually. It's like what I call my life's work. When people ask me, like, what do you do? I say that, like, oh, this is like my life's work, that I want to do this pretty much until it keeps growing and becomes a legacy that I eventually leave behind. So what I essentially do is we have a farm. We have two farms that are based both in Tanzania, but one on the island, Zanzibar, and then
Okay.
one on the main in Bagamoyo. And we grow plant-based crops that are consumable. So we don't grow cash crops at the moment. We grow things like maize and fruits and vegetables and tubular what do they call them? The typical foods that you eat, like cassava and things
Yeah.
like that. And then now that we have a well, we are now branching into the microgreens and the really
Oh,
like high margin foods that you don't really see commonly in Tanzania. And we also have a greenhouse where we grow oyster mushrooms. That's very specific because it's difficult to grow them in such hot, humid weather, but we found a way. We mix traditional and modern techniques. So we have a sprinkler system, but it's very traditionally made. We have a thatch roofing, and but we also do vertical farming. So there's a combination of like traditional and modern ways to get to a certain end. And then what we do that's different is we process everything into products that can be used. So we'll make either soaps and moisturizers, but we'll also do powders, and we will do fortified flours, and we'll also do jams and dried versions of the foods with processing that is not laden with chemicals, that is like still organic and still sustainable. And then the third leg that we're trying to put into the business model that makes the most sense for Tanzania is the hospitality section. So Tanzania is very dependent on tourism. It's one of our big drivers for economic development. And so we get a lot of requests from people to either come see the farm or come learn how to grow mushrooms or come stay with us, because everyone is like, tired from the urban life that they have and they want to go closer to nature. And we realized that, like, oh, these spaces can also act as farm hotels where people can stay, they can get closer to nature, they can learn about Tanzanian traditional beauty secrets and food and growing. And it could also benefit the community because it extends the economic value that a farm or farming can bring to Tanzanians. So that's essentially what we do.
okay. This what you said now is very interesting, and there's one part I want to pick out first. You mentioned now that we have a well. What does that mean?
Oh, yes. So water is actually a very challenging thing here. Like it's
Commodity.
it's a scarce commodity. First of all, because at first we were connected to the main line. So we had government water that was we're connected to what they're called dawasa. I don't know if you have like a government entity that like provides the water,
Yeah.
but we used to have that, and there would be moments when we'll go through a drought, and then there won't be water for 3 weeks at a time or months at a time. And when you have a farm, water is such an important thing that it just becomes inefficient and ineffective, and you don't get a good crop. And then also, there's a point in time where we had conflicts with neighboring herders who they graze their cows in the neighborhood. And so, because their cows don't get that didn't get enough water, they would feed the cows our watermelons or our pineapples or our cashews and fruits, and that
Without
would
your permission. Without
Hmm?
your permission. Without your permission.
Without our permission, yes, without our
Wow.
permission. That's why even in in the conversations that I have with people, I'm like, oh, right now my biggest goal is to fence in all the 25 acres because we're having such a hard time controlling the animals that are getting into the farm. And then the problem is that like droughts and climate change have brought out so many of these conflicts because these farmers are nomadic pastoralists that come all the way from like north, like they go all the way from North Sudan and they go all the way down. And so they don't really belong to a government. Like, so even the local government is having a hard time dealing with them because they're not really citizens. And so it's like, what law do they follow? Because they follow ancient
Wow.
nomadic. And so it brings in a lot of conflict, and that conflict centers around water, to be honest. And so yeah, and so the excitement about water is like, oh, we finally have water, and then we're gonna fence it in, and then we'll at least have some kind of like positive response. But in return, because like we do understand the trouble that they're going through, we have started hydroponic farming where we take like grains like maize or like the cheap grains, sorghum, things
Yeah.
like that are available, and then we um what do you call them? We propagate them, and you get hay, like that you animal feed, that you basically just fertilize it with water. You don't put soil into it, and then you can use that for animal feed. So it both benefits the herders because they can get an alternative, but it also benefits us because at least we can have some profits that are coming in from growing the animal feed instead of just blocking our fence, and then which will take the problem to somebody else.
Wow.
Mm.
So, but how did you come about this well? How did you come about it? With water being a scarce commodity, how did you come about a well? Did you just find a place and you dug, and have you tried over and over? How many times have you tried till you found one?
Actually, this is the second time we tried. The first time we contacted some people, but they didn't really have the right tools. Because back in the day, there was someone that will come with like these two tongs, and then they were like, it was very interesting to me
Wow.
because I was like, this doesn't look scientific, but they were just be like, oh, there's probably one out here. And I was like, this feels like vibe. And then we marked the area, we did a little bit of digging, but there was no water. And then this time around, like after saving up properly, so like I saved up for a year and a half, a lot of penny pinching, a lot of savings, and then also took a little bit of savings from my dad as well, since we're doing this together. And
That's fair.
then we hired somebody that actually has like a sonogram machine that like measures out like where is the water, what's the water quality, what is the depth, the exact depth that you need to dig. And we finally found a place on the farm, which is actually a prime location, to be honest, because it's very near to the place that we want to put the first farm B&B, like the farm hotel. And so that will like solve a lot of our problems actually. So we dug the well. It's a borehole, so it makes it easier. You don't have to do like the proper well. You do the big pipes that goes through, and then you put a pump, and then you can pump that water into a reservoir, and then that reservoir um sends the water where you need to send it, honestly. And there's a good amount of water that's available, and we're quite lucky, I think, because that area is actually notorious for not having enough water because it's like sort of close to the urban area and sort of like just outside the urban area.
This is very interesting, to be honest. Right. Right. And it's it's one of the things, it's one of the reasons why I appreciate entrepreneurs because they're always doing things that where people see no way, they find a way. They see a way. Before they even find one, they're already seeing it. They can envision that, I can do this. But it's not possible. Don't worry. I can do it. Right? In a place where, water is scarce, you decided to start something agricultural, like the audacity. You understand? And now you have a well. Now you're looking at people like, I told you I could do it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. In the beginning, a lot of people were just like, you went to Dartmouth, you went to school in the UK, and you're coming back to farm in Africa. Like, are you serious? And
Wow.
there's no money. Because, like, for a long time, Tanzanians have looked, and I don't blame them, honestly, because to us, farming for a long time, first of all, was like, it was very much under the rule and the guise of colonialism, where it was just like cash crop monoculture. You're growing either like cotton or sisal or things like that, and it's all shipped abroad. And then farmers were like kind of like stuck in a very specific place. Even when the free trade opened, people were only allowed to have so much money, like from their products, like raw materials. And then there's all these rules. And so for us, when I came back in, I was like, no, I want to be able to process. I want to be able to like grow this into like a sustainable business model. But to do that, you have to be patient. You have to be patient. You have to have grit. You have to be very stubborn and just be like, you know what, I'm going to hold on long enough because I see where I'm trying to go. And I'm really lucky that I have the support from my family to do that, honestly. Mm.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And the final question on that aspect is now that you have this water, do people request from it, maybe even try to buy from you? Do you see that as something like a kind of maybe side business that can come out of that? Or you just focus on only your farms?
Not at the moment, no. Because right now, people around they're still kind of like, how do I say this in a way that's like kind, but like people are kind of, they have their own methods of doing things, and people do not really want to bear extra costs for doing things,
Mm.
so a lot of farmers around us, they farm the way we were farming whenever Dawasa ran out of water. Oh, so I shouldn't probably mention Dawasa because I don't want any beef with the government. Whenever the water ran out, like we would wait for rains, essentially. There was like nothing to do other than just like hope for the best. But a lot of people still farm like that. A lot of people farm cyclically, and wait for the weather patterns. And then, yeah, and their yield is not always good. And it's really expensive to change that. So I don't really blame people because, like, they would be like, why would you charge? Like, why would I buy water when I can wait for rain? So we haven't crossed that bridge yet. Maybe in the future when people see that, like, oh, you've done really well, I should get in on that, and then maybe people would want to purchase. But I don't foresee it becoming a really big business. Yeah, I don't really foresee becoming a big business because then most people would rather dig a well on their farm so that they can have their own their own resource.
Yeah.
We're not really at a place where we're very, it's kind of like zero sum game, like I want to win, but like I don't want to win together. Like we're not there yet where we're super collaborative. Slowly it's like coming up, but it's not culturally quite there yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. Right. And
Yeah.
um I have a question, right, that I had in mind that I was going to ask today. And while you were speaking, the question popped up once more, which is what you said now. You said you were even in the UK, right? And now you're back here to
Mm.
farm. So what problem did you see or what personal experience did you have that made you feel like, this is what I want to do. So I want to go and do this. Did you have that mindset before leaving home that, oh, once I leave home, I must go back to do this? Or it was when you left home, you just realized this is happening. Let me go and fix it. Tell us a story about that.
Thank you for asking that, actually, because like I feel pretty passionate about it now. Um So I always wanted to give back to my community. So I was a scholarship kid. I like to tell people that because a lot of people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're probably a nepo baby," and I'm like, "No, I've had scholarship like 11 years old, school scholarships specifically, and every stage of like my education, because of those scholarships, opened up so many opportunities, so many doors. I got to like see all the things I could possibly do with my skills. And I always felt so grateful. And I always felt so guilty that like I was only one of the few that got those opportunities. And so even when I remember going to the US for my undergrad, I wanted to come back to Tanzania, and I did come back to Tanzania actually. And then it was kind of a learning curve because I had a culture shock coming back because I was just like, oh, what do I do? Who do I do it with? I don't even know what's going
Yeah.
on. Like, me like an outsider. And then I couldn't get a job that I wanted. I ended up working for a bank. Like everybody works for a bank at some point. I ended up working for the bank. And then I was like, okay, but I just don't want to just like make money off of people. It was super capitalist. I felt like my soul was shriveling up and dying. I wasn't really doing what I was called to do. And so I quit the bank and then I went to work for a nonprofit. But then I was like, oh, I need health insurance. This is like a little bit too much. But I worked for the nonprofit for like a year and I helped them a lot and it was really nice. They actually reached out to me recently because they were like, can we work together again? I'm like, sure. And then I ended up working for a corporate company doing marketing and business development. And then I ended up working for a embassy, like the Swedish embassy in Tanzania, doing political affairs and trade promotion. So like I've really had like a very eclectic, um, what you call this, an eclectic work experience. And throughout that work experience, I was still trying to find ways to give back to the community. Like, how do I help my community? How do I solve this? Maybe this company will do it. Maybe this organization will help me do it. And then at some point, I realized that, like, oh, actually, no, there's so many limitations to each of these sectors and to each of these companies. I need to be able to do it myself with my resources. And so I was like, okay, what resources do I have? And then I looked and I was like, oh, we have a plot of land that belongs to the family. Let me talk to my retired dad and see what we can do about it. I was like, hey, dad, do you want to go into farming professionally? And then he was like, yeah, I want to do it. And I was like, okay, here are all my savings. Let's buy up these plots of land around us. Let us like choose something that we can do that's a little bit less labor intensive. So we started with planting cashew trees. Like, so cashew trees are kind of like a little bit less labor intensive. They grow by themselves. They fold at some point. You have to pick them up. And we started slowly like that until it became a real business because we started getting surplus and then we started having to think of ways of like, oh, how do we extend the shelf life of these fruits and vegetables and things like that? Oh, we have to hire more people. Oh, we have to teach people how to do these things. And then I started seeing how everybody that we taught or everybody that we employed or everybody that we worked with, the communities around them, it started actually like empowering them in the ways that I wanted to empower my communities when I was working for all these different organizations in these different sectors. But I was doing it, but it was in a way that felt correct to me. It was giving people real freedom, real financial freedom, to make their decisions, to like feel like they are capable of changing their own lives and the lives of the people in their families and in their communities. And so I was like, oh, this is it. Like I finally figured out like what I was called to do. And so entrepreneurship made the most sense for me. And then now I still do consulting. I still do short-term gig works like with founders and nonprofits and other people who like either they want to get an idea off the chart or they want to improve their like sales. So it just works so well
Oh,
for me right now. Mm.
that's nice. That's lovely, actually. And the more you speak, the more glad I'm doing this, right? Because I always talk about how powerful Africa is, right? And I realized to myself, how many entrepreneurs, how many people do I really know in Africa? I'm like, well, let's go and know them, yeah. And I'm speaking to you, and then I'm hearing all these amazing things, and I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I'm always ready to tell investors, to tell partners, anyone, anywhere in the world, that Africa is the place. And I'm currently in Nigeria, and a lot of people have asked me, why don't you go overseas? Right, and I've gotten scholarships as well, right? In fact, even now I'm studying overseas, but virtually, because I'm like, why am I going there? I have things to do here,
Yeah.
and I just want to meet more people, more amazing people like you, right? And now we've heard this amazing story, but I wanted to then talk about the impact, right? Like what are your hero products that people get a lot, right? That people love to get from your business, and why do they
Mm.
love to get that from your business? And how has it impacted you, your family? You said your dad gave all his savings, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy, So how has it impacted the family? Let us know the good, and if you're comfortable sharing the bad as well, let us know the bad, because people out there need to know that as much as we encourage people to be business owners, it's hard. It's very,
Mm.
very hard. In fact, when people tell me, "Oh, I want to be like you," I'm like, I don't think you know what you want. I don't think you want to do that. So let us know the good. Let us know the bad. Let's know how it's going. Okay, please.
Yeah. No, it is absolutely challenging. It's like super challenging. So I recently completed an MBA in the UK. I left knowing that I wanted to come back for sure. But I knew I needed like business foundation. That's why I ended up doing like a master's in business, and I went to London Business School. And
Oh,
the the whole challenge of it started there from the first place. So like you're in a room with a lot of people that are privileged in a sense that like they're privileged in ways that you can't even fathom, because like when you don't grow up with privilege, when you grow up in Africa, and especially when you grow up in an emerging economy, like Tanzania's economy is even weaker than Nigeria's economy, but it still has so much opportunity. Like you see so much opportunity. You see the grit and the like, perseverance that people have. You see like entrepreneurship is in our blood, like in ways that are like hard to explain to Westerners, because they will see something and they'll be like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for this. We call them mamantilίες, but it's the ladies that cook on the side of the road, whereas for us, we're like, oh, look at her. She's like doing her own business. Like she's like working for herself. Like she's putting food on the table. Like she has like a grit that is admirable. And so when I think about entrepreneurship, right, like I think about it from like it is more challenging for Africans to do entrepreneurship. It's in our blood, but it's even more challenging, because I would walk in spaces in London and people would just be like, oh, why don't you just like fundraise? Why don't you just like get a grant? Or like, why don't you just like, I don't know,
yeah,
why don't you get an investor or like a partner? And I'm just like, you're operating in places that like do not exist in the same way for us. Like no one is going to come give you a handout. Nobody's going to come and just like root for you so easily, because you're also fighting against all these stereotypes, of like Africa is corrupt and Africa is like unorganized and
exactly,
Africa, like, they'll be like, it has potential, but like they won't even describe what that potential is, unless there's like a white face that is like heading that potential. So you're fighting against all of that, like, but at the same time, you have a customer base that is still learning how to trust someone that looks like them. Like in Tanzania, unfortunately, culturally, we prefer things that are imported, or like we prefer, like, we pref- we trust, not we prefer, we trust things more
mm,
if there is a
exactly,
foreign, right? Because we have a long history with like missionaries and things like that. It's like neocolonialism, We trust more when there's a foreign entity that is like running something than when there is someone from within that's growing it. It's changing slowly, and I do have a lot of like friends and entrepreneurs here that are like very supportive of like each other's growth, but there's still a lot of convincing that you have to do to your customers. So like we do have like a really loyal group of customers that love our soaps. So our soap became our MVP. We started with the farm products, but then as soon as we started with the skincare, people were like, oh, I love this soap. And particularly because it's really good for people with sensitive skin and babies and people with eczema. So a lot of
mm,
soaps have harsh chemicals and they don't really nurture the skin. Whereas like our soaps, people are like, oh, I swear by them, because we have a good amount of testimonials where people are like, oh, these actually work. And we have a medium tier pricing. So like it's not cheap, but it's like still cheaper than the like other stuff that's in the market that promises half of what we deliver, So
yeah,
that's something that then people are really brought into the brand. And because I started Bantu Vegan, ages ago. So I started as just kind of like an online blog where I was blogging about food and nutrition and vegan food and plant-based food and traditional versions of that. People have already like trusted my expertise in this particular field. So it's really
Mm,
helpful in the business now as we're growing. Now, the growing pains, right, come from you go from having an idea, right? Like, and you're like, I spent a long time convincing people that this idea will work or like this is better for you. And then finally, now I have my family that's like, okay, now we're on board. Now we're building this together. So now there's a sense of responsibility where you're like, oh, I cannot mess it up because I am telling these people that are now 100% on this boat with me that this is going to work. So you are constantly as an entrepreneur in this seat where you're like a leader, but you have to do it in such a careful way where you don't, mess else's life, where you're not making bad decisions, that will affect someone. You have to be professional at the same time. You have to be a family member at the same time. So like you have to balance those two. And then you also have to be now, especially since I've chosen to build in public, you also have to be like um, honest enough that like people can see through like
yeah.
the humanness of like building a business and what you're trying to do. But you also have to be careful enough that you're not just like revealing your weaknesses before they have like hardened into
Yes.
lessons and and so there is this friction of like trying to grow, trying to bring people with you, trying to teach a customer base that is like just now learning how to like, buy our own. And then you also have to prove yourself to like this group of like people that are not used to someone like you winning, you know? And so I don't know if I've gone around too much, but I feel like for
Okay.
my struggle as an entrepreneur kind of exists within that space.
Okay.
Hmm.
And I want to believe a lot of entrepreneurs that see this um and also feel and resonate with what you just said, right? Because as you were speaking, I was also resonating with what you said, right? The building in public aspect, right? It's very real, and the weakness aspect is very real, and the trusting foreign products is it's I don't know how to put this, but it's a problem. It's a problem, and I know we are walking past it now, but like it's still a bit of a problem where people see your products and they see a foreign product and they're like, ah, well, this is from the UK.
Mm.
She's doing great, but I trust them better. They're not going to make the mistakes she's making. They're not going to make the mistakes he's making. And that's not how we grow. And I think more Africans need to realize that we need to support our own inbuilt products, right? I mean, look at China, for example. Ah, geez, they're so good, right? So,
Yeah.
and I believe Africa can become something like that and even more, right? But we can't if we do not support one another, right?
Mm.
Very lovely stuff. But a question I have, and I believe a lot of entrepreneurs have this question: how do you get customers? Right? How do you
Mm.
get customers? Is it content, referral? I mean, you just started building in public, so even before you were building in public, how did you get customers? Because everyone's idea now is you must make content, you must do this, you must do that, and I
Yeah.
mean, while that is accurate, it's just a part of it. It's just a part of it, right? There's still so much more to do in the physical. Let me call it the physical realm, right? So
Yeah.
how do you get customers?
Mm. First of all, I do agree with what you're saying about like there's so much in the back end that needs to be done. Even us, for example, we're now rebuilding our workshops. We've saved up to like build a nicer workshop because we started in our kitchens. We started the kitchen, and then
Oh,
people are like, "You're professionalizing, right?" And so now we're like building a job where we're actually going to follow the like certification regulations that you need to follow so that you can get certified and you can get kind of like the Bureau of Standards stamp or like the America calls it federal drug and like FDA approval, federal drug administration approval. For us
yeah,
is Tanzania Bureau
FDA.
of Standards. And that will give us more access to like supermarkets or like places where they require those certifications for you to be able to like, get to their customer. We started in the beginning, honestly, with word of mouth. So we started with our neighbors. So in the beginning, when we had a surplus of farm produce, we just basically went to our neighbors. We're like, "Hey, do you want some spinach? Do you want some this? Do you want some kale?" And then they would be like, "Oh yeah." And then they started hearing. They're like, "Oh, if you want kale, go to that place." You know. And then we went from that to like loading things up on a truck and then going to the main market and then selling it to the vendors and be like, "Hey, vendors, I have thousands of pineapples. Who wants to buy it at like farm rates as opposed to middleman rates?" Because like the farmers usually get middlemen and then the middlemen hike up the price a little bit more. But we were like, no,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
sell price straight from the farm. And then we started getting regular customers like that for B2B, and also for the retail ones. And then we went from that to like, I started now selling to my colleagues. I'll just be like, "Oh, by the way, I'm doing this thing." And they will like be like, "Oh, I heard from someone that you like have soaps, or I heard from someone that you have coconut milk," or like things like that. I'll be like, "Yeah, I do. Should I bring you some?" And then I literally would load my car up with like products after products and things after things. And then like outside the parking lot, I'll be like, "All right, next, you ordered this, you wanted this." I'll send WhatsApp texts and stuff like that. And then I started doing the content, and that also brought in a whole new customer base. For sure, I'm not gonna lie, like content really does help a lot. Like people, especially now when people are fighting for attention, everybody's fighting for attention. You have to kind of like also add your voice into the noise. And so that does bring in people. But the thing that works for me the most is keeping my loyal customer base, like taking care of them, making sure that they're like that they're well taken care of. Because sometimes people forget their existing customers and they focus so much more on like the new customers, the acquiring new customers. But if you make sure that you have good customer service for like your existing customers, you maintain them, and they will also like increase their like, they talk about lifetime value, customer lifetime value, where they're like, they'll go from buying something that's like $10 worth to something that's $50 worth over time because they trust you more. And then also, I have learned, especially after coming back, I've been here since June last year. And then I've learned that like Tanzanians prefer to buy retail. They prefer to like walk into a store or run into your product somewhere, going into the market or in specific areas where most of our customers actually buy from. Because like, when you're keeping data, you can learn. And so now the next step that we want to take is to go to the farmers markets where a lot of people buy our kinds of products from, to go and rent out a small retail shop that's nearby the area where our customers buy from the most, and basically just be in their face. So I would say, if you want to get more customers, you have to learn your customers, and you have to also accept like who they are. I don't like doing farmers markets. I'm a fake extrovert. I'm really introverted, and
Fake.
and so I've been avoiding a long time, like going to the farmers markets. But eventually, I've come to accept that, like, oh, every time I do go to like one of the farmers markets, or when I go out into these spaces, I do see and interact with the most customers, and so I need to go where they are, and I need to do the techniques that they would prefer, to be taught to. And events. So like pop-up events are also such a big thing. I have some planned for the remaining of the year, still
Fingers
building it together.
crossed.
But quarter 4 is what I'm aiming for. Not anytime soon, but like, yeah, quarter 4. So pop-up events, anything to really tell your customer like, "Hey, I'm here," and but in the method that they prefer. So for us, it's um Instagram. A lot of people are on Instagram, and then a lot of people are on WhatsApp. So like we get a lot of our orders through WhatsApp, and then and a few online, but unfortunately the online ones are always like people who are outside of Tanzania, and then we also have to kind of
Oh,
like tell them, "We only deliver Tanzania, so sorry, but can I add you to this waiting list, when we're ready to export," which is really good mentally, but also like pressure. because I'm like, all right, my savings can only get me from point A to point B for now, but wait. And,
Yeah.
yeah, and events and farmers markets and retail. Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious about the skincare. How did you build that trust, right? Because it's skincare. People don't usually trust any kind of brand, right? So though
Mm,
you've mentioned a bit about it, where you said you started with word of mouth, but how was it like? How did you build that trust? And do you think people still have that trust in you now?
mm, yes, they do even more so because like more and more people are like, "Oh, you're a bunch of vegan." Like, I'm not too much of a stranger. Like, I'm still very small fish, but I'm not too much of a stranger. So with the skincare, I think it helps that our products are organic. Like the products that we have right now are natural. They're preservative free. Like they're very organic. But on top of that, we have certifications that we got from the government. So there's this pretty cool agency that's called CEDO. It's Small Industries Development Organization, where they provide trainings and certifications for how to deal with chemicals and how to make wines and make preservatives and foods and preserve foods, sorry, and things like that. And so once you get those certifications, it's kind of like a nice label that you get that like, hey, like I know what I'm doing. I'm not just like, having fun in the kitchen. And then it's again word of mouth. One person tries it, they recommend it to somebody else, and slowly we start to get customers, and then slowly we start to get retail stores that reach out to us. They're like, "Hey, we'd like to carry your products because somebody came in asking for it," and things like that. So like it's a combination of like they've seen us for long enough making this and like doing it with a lot of care and a lot of slowness. And then now they're like seeing other people that are trying it and using it and like having good outcomes because it does take a lot of personal integrity because like sometimes we've like bought, for example, fake oils that we didn't know were fake, and we've made the soaps and then the chemical reaction doesn't like happen, and then you get these soaps that are like not really nice, and some people they will take that
Right.
and they'll still sell it, but we've thrown away like vats and vats of like bad soaps that have cost us a lot of money, but we're like, no, we would rather have quality and and safety, of our customers than just try to make money. So I think I I have this privilege of like, because again, I think I am privileged that like I'm not desperate, right? Like I'm single, I don't have kids, I don't have um ramifications of failing. Like if I fail, I have failed, and I'll find other ways to make sure that my family are okay. But like I'm not in survival mode, which really does
Yeah,
help me be able to make these decisions that are not fully based on money, you know?
I do. I get that. I get that a lot. And I'm in the same boat, right? And though I've met founders, entrepreneurs who have kids, married, not a kid, they have kids, right? And I tell them I know it can be tough. And I'm playing to them. I'm like, don't worry, you've missed that boat. Or you've missed the boat where you don't have to be that, oh, I'm not in survival mode, Worst case scenario, I close up the business and I go find a job, right? You
Yeah,
missed that boat. No, no, no. You have
yeah,
to make sure this works,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
It's hard that space. Yeah,
Exactly. But I think it's still something that can work, especially if their partner is supportive and maybe their family and
yeah,
friends are supportive towards. And for some, to be honest, they don't really have a choice. That's how, crazy it can be in Africa. They don't have a choice. So they have to just do it. It's either this works or it works. There's no, it might not work. It must work. Right.
yeah.
Um,
True.
but and one thing I've seen while we're all trying to make it work is that we then start to do a lot of things. And some people say there's this quote, something about the jack of all trades, master of none. I don't I don't believe in that quote at all. In fact, that's not the full
Me-
quote, based on what I learned. It's
Yeah,
there's something about master of none, but oftentimes better than something like that, right?
none
So
than one.
yes, exactly. So, I mean,
Yeah,
knowing a lot of things to me will always outrank just being good at one thing. So what if what you're facing is not that? And that's how entrepreneurship is. You don't
Mm.
always face one thing. There's so many battles. So what if you are facing more than that one thing? Does that mean that's the end for you? In my head, I'm like, how does that even work? And one of the things about Africa is that there's some structures we don't have in place yet in particular countries, if not all countries. And because we don't have those structures in place, I could be building a business and realize I need this. And there might be no
Mhm.
one to partner with, or at least no one I trust. And I might have to build another business that can balance that up. Right?
Yeah.
So now suddenly I'm found with two businesses. Right? And sometimes it might just be a thing of cash flow. Like I have this thing I
Mm.
know that people are interested in as well. So let me just take advantage of that. And then people might say, for this one that you have right now, you're still building it. So why don't you wait before you start that one? But you've seen the
Mm.
budgets, you've seen your books, right? You know that if I do this, it's actually going to help me with some things. Somehow I'm going to just balance it that this will help this. And when this is low, this will help this. And then it's just helping one
Yeah.
another, right? And I'm saying that because now we have skincare, snacks, and stays. And I'm
Mm.
wondering what brought about the unique combination. Maybe it's something you can share that is, like what brought about
Mm.
that unique combination and what really is the stays about? What's the experience with the stays? Just more insight on that.
Yeah, I remember so many people did not get me at all in the MBA program I did. They were like, specialization. Why don't you specialize? Why don't you only grow cashew nuts and export them? And I'm like, no, that's not the point. So why? Why skincare, snacks, and stays? Well, first, I like the alliteration. It makes it a little bit easier to like explain what I'm doing with the SSS.
For
But
sure.
how it actually happened is that like we started out with the farm, right? We started out with the farm, and then I quickly noticed that so, for example, some of the rules with farming here are very specific to to country and government and to like policies and stuff. So, for example, selling raw cashew nuts is is something that you can't sell raw cashew nuts straight to the customer, like at least in their like farm stage. There was a law at some point where like you couldn't do that. You had to sell it to a middleman. The government buys it, and then there's a fixed price for what you get in return. But then it's a lot of like red tape that we just felt that like, oh no, like going through all of that just does not make sense for us because we weren't even big enough at that time to like do that, but also it wasn't going to be profitable enough. So we said, okay, let's process then our cashew nuts, let's process ourselves, let's make ready to eat cashew nut snacks, and then we got the benefit of getting a bigger margin, from like the customer, as opposed to just selling the raw cashew fruit
Yeah.
straight to the government. And then we said, oh, this is great. And then we started now expanding our ideas of like, what else can we process, And then we learned that like, oh, you can dry tomatoes and get sun-dried tomatoes. And sun-dried tomatoes are way more expensive in the market
Yeah.
than real, and then we said, oh, this is great, what else can we process? And then we started learning that, well, we can grow mushrooms, but we can also make mushroom powder. We could also grow herbs and make like moringa powder. And then we say like, oh, actually this moringa, we can use it straight in our products, and then we get the best quality of products that we use for soap. So we started doing turmeric and getting turmeric powder and then processing it ourselves. And then we also started working with other farmers and, let's say, buying their coconuts and then pressing the oils and getting straight clean oil to use in our soaps. Um, and then that part now became the skincare. Like the skincare line took off, and that actually was the most profitable part of our model. And the profits could then go back into the farm, and like, buy fencing material, pay more people to work with us. And so we said, like, oh, this skincare line is actually holding up our business. So, like, if we get a bad crop, we're not going to die because we
Yeah.
have this thing to fall back on. And that's very African, I feel like, especially work in an environment like this that's like not very predictable and constantly changing. There's constant challenges. You need something that you can fall back on. And so that
Yeah.
basically is how it grew. But people started loving that because they were like, oh, it's from farm to shelf, farm to pantry. Like we're controlling every single part of our supply chain. And so they know that they are assured quality at the end, and they're like, oh, no one else is like trying to be as transparent as possible and like showing that like, oh, we actually like make this and you get it because we grow it or we work with the farmers that actually grow it and like they know where we source our essential oils and things like that. But so that's the idea. And then with the stays, it's very unique to Tanzania because, like, again, tourism here is such a big deal. And I kept getting DM after DM, email after email of people are like, can I volunteer at your farm? Can I stay at your farm? Can I come learn how to grow mushrooms? There's a lot of those where people want to learn, you know? And then we've done a few workshops. We've invited a few friends to come and like see what we're doing. And everybody's like, this is amazing. More people would love to come and do this, you know? And these are people who are travel influencers. These are schools and they're nonprofits that are learning different things to do with like permaculture and like traditional farming or like organic farming or regenerative farming. And then we said, oh, this has to be a chain in our model that connects everything, you know, because it just absolutely makes sense. And then it also has the outcome of doing the impact work that we've always wanted to do in society, you know, as we teach people and train people and like keep that kind of like archival information about Tanzanian food, Tanzanian culture, Tanzanian beauty going and growing, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's exactly like what I just said. When you start a business, especially in an African country, you start to see that the business connects to several other things, or maybe that business needs several other things, right? And you can't just turn away that profit because it helps the business as a whole, and it helps you to push forward, right? The stays will help, the snacks will help, the skincare will help. One way or another, people are going to know about me. Right? But then doing business, comes with its own uh losses, right? Just as it comes with its wins, right? So what's one mistake you made maybe early? If you don't want to share a recent mistake, but a mistake you made early or earlier on
Mm,
that you'd save another African builder from making.
mm. I did not ask for help early on. Like early on, I was very much like, I will do everything myself. Like I will do this and I will do that. And I just like completely burned out and I got exhausted and the business was growing so tiny, so slow. I can't say I gave up because I'm very stubborn, but I was like the closest I've ever thought. I even considered it. I was like, because usually I don't even think about like, the idea of like giving up, and giving in. But I came quite close to it because I was very much like, I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to like tell anyone what I'm doing. Yeah, like I was very much like a little silo in my little island trying to build this thing, And then only when I invited people in, only when I told people like, hey, I would like to do this. Can you help me? Only when I allowed people actually to see like how passionate I am about it and how serious I am about it, did I finally have the community and the support and the actual opportunity to build it, if that makes sense. So I think my mistake in the very, very beginning was to like really think that I can do it by myself. And I just don't believe I certainly don't believe that anyone can build by themselves. Like it's not really true. Like you always get support somehow. Even like our first retail partner was a friend of a friend. You know what I mean? Like so I think you really need community to actually build. So yeah, so I would say that like if anyone is thinking about building from the get-go, they should like look for support, even if it's emotional.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. The reason is simple because I made the same mistake myself. Then, there's just this thing about where when you're working on something, it feels like everyone wants to just bring you down, right?
Mm,
And I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do it myself, right? I'm gonna do it myself. I can get it done. I'm skilled myself. I've also got, I told you I've got scholarships myself, right? So I'm like, I said, do you know what's inside his brain? I can do it myself. And I don't know. There was just this aspect where I felt like people were gonna drag me down. And later
yeah.
on in life, when I did get people, there were some people who actually drag me down. But
Mm,
it's part of the learning process, right? There will always be people like that. You then have to know how to work with them. Maybe you try to make sure that they don't drag you down, or you remove them and switch them with someone else, right? It's always
mm,
going to be there, but you don't want to do it alone. You don't want to do it alone. So
very, very true.
yeah, as we start to round up actually. I want to ask if the right partners or customers are watching, what opportunities are you open to right now? Maybe collaborators, maybe tourism partners, like you mentioned earlier, distributors, maybe funding, right? Or maybe press, partners, anyone. What are you open to right now?
Ooh, that's a really good question. For funding, I don't want to like bite the hand that feeds me, but I don't want to dilute any equity. I don't want to like get someone that will tell me what to do right now at this moment in time, because like I have a very specific, by
Yeah.
I mean like, me and my family have a very specific set of goals and milestones that we want to hit, because we know that like, okay, we need to do ABC to get to like DEF. So like funding is a little bit is problematic, because like it always comes with so many strings, and I say this as someone that's like worked in like both like capitalist and like non-government and government organizations, so I know the strings. But I'm open to more like retail partners, hotel partners, people that want to carry my products, or people that want to stock my products, or even people that just want to like chat a little bit more about like, okay, so where's this going? And then they want to like, follow and like see what I do next, so that they know when they can come in. Like I'm at a point where I don't know, I don't want to sound selfish, but like I'm at a point where I'm like, I know this is going to work. So I'm just like growing
Mhm.
it. And if someone sees, where they can plug in, they can plug in, but I don't really need to beg, if that makes sense. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I get
Yeah,
you. I
like
get you
I'm at
indeed.
the stage where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do, drive this as far as I
Mhm.
can go, and then I will see, like because I built in the beginning still thinking, keeping in mind that like, oh, I need to get the right funding partner. I need to say the right thing. I need to do the right things. But then it didn't really work. And then when like freed myself from that, and then I said like, okay, I'm just gonna do my consulting work, and I'm gonna put my money in this, and we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna build this. If that stops, we're gonna continue with this. That actually is something that worked better. So right now I'm like, looking for serious buyers, or like people who want to like support each other through the entrepreneurship building, because entrepreneurship is very, very lonely, and so
Yeah.
like if people be like, like, hey, keep going, that kind of support, would love that. But I'm in a place where I'm like confident in like going for it and bootstrapping through it, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, you can't really grow a big business if you don't have big funding, or if you don't have big capital, or if you're like you don't follow point ABC. But I'm like kind of past the point of caring. Now I'm like at a point where I'm like, I'm gonna do my best, and we'll see where we're gonna go. But I believe in the journey, and I believe in the story, and I believe in other people that are also like building and trying to like make something out of thin air, and like do something productive and positive for their communities.
Okay. That's great. But I want to ask, right? And it's a follow-up to this question actually. And
Mm.
basically, you said earlier that you have this waiting list for people outside Tanzania, right? Did I get that right? Yeah. So
I,
what if sorry?
sorry, say that one more time.
I said you said you have a waiting list for people outside Tanzania.
Yes, 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 yes. For the
Okay.
farm.
Okay. So are you saying none of your products are outside Tanzania right now?
No, no, because with cosmetics, you have to get a very specific certification for being able to like sell in Europe or sell in America. Because a lot of the times it's complicated, because there is free trade agreements, but also at the same time they like really prefer to get raw materials from Africa than finished goods from Africa, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
so I'm still going through the steps of like getting certifications that will allow me to export um legally.
okay. So that's also within Africa, right?
Within Africa, I can export. Yes, within Africa. If I get the TBS, which is quite close, I can get access to East Africa. You know, because like we are part of the East African community, like trading community, so it'll be easier. But if it's outside the East African region, then it's other specific ones that are like more of like international certifications.
Oh, okay. Okay. So though I will be putting your information and your details in the in the I think it's not the comment section, there's a name for it, but I can't remember. But where should people find you and what's best the best first products or offer that you want them to try?
Oh, that's a really good one. Good question. They can find me on all the apps. I am still growing on my social media journey, so they should have patience in the kind of posting and posting times that I do.
Yeah.
But they can find me where online as the Bantu Vegan, or they can find the company as Bantu Vegan, or Sabrina Yegela. If you look me up, you'll probably find me everywhere on LinkedIn, on Instagram, TikTok. You can probably like dig up my email somewhere because I have really poor online security. Um, and then in terms of product, because I feel like your customer base is probably outside of Tanzania, like I don't really have any products for them at the moment. But if they like the sound of what I'm building, they can like share, follow, subscribe. Oh, I'm also trying to build on YouTube because that's the next step, where I'm like, all right, I'm
That's
gonna
great.
show up myself and then like talk about what I'm doing, but talking about it from like a like goal setting and talking about my business model a little bit deeper so that people who are also building and who are also
Yeah.
going the entrepreneur like see like what I'm doing and how I'm scheduling it, or not scheduling it, but like segmenting it, like who, what, how, things like that. And so yeah, I would really love for them to follow the journey, tell me about their journey, their entrepreneurship journey, because it's so cool to see other people building because it makes you feel a little bit less crazy, and that like
Yes.
doing is something that's normal and that other people also have a passion for.
Okay, that's great. I still think you should mention just one product at least because you don't know anyone from Tanzania could see this. I mean, you could reshare this and then someone could see it, right? So even if it's just one
Yeah.
product. Yeah.
So I would definitely tell them to try our soaps. Our
Okay.
best seller, our cinnamon coffee paprika soap. People really like that one. It has a very special meaning to me because like my mom is from Zanzibar. She's Zanzibari, and she knows
Oh,
all the beauty secrets. And I feel like our products are very unique in their formulations. And this one is one of the most unique ones. So yes.
all right. So so wrapping up, Sabrina, this has been brilliant. Thank you for building with intention, right? And for sharing the
Thank you.
real story behind the brand. And for those out there watching, this is the OK Room, Builders of Africa. If you got value from this, there's no if you got value. I know you got value from this, right? Share with one person building something on the continent. And if you want to support Sabrina, please, we'll have our links in the description. Go try our products, follow our journey. If you can try the product based on your location, follow our journey. Reach out for partnerships, reach out for maybe advice, mentorship. I think she mentioned some things like that, right? So,
Yes.
Sabrina, back to you. Back to you. One last word. What do you want people to remember about your brand?
I want them to remember that this brand is authentic and it's based from a very honest and um, heartfelt place. Like, so it comes from very honest and heartfelt place, and it's very much for the community, by the community, and of the community.
All right, that's great. Once again, thank you for being here. It's amazing having you. Right. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a wrap. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much. Have a good one, and let's keep in touch.